For this last video, I'm just going to talk for a second about how to get away from using the argparse file type. And I've thought about this a little bit, and maybe I want to keep it as simple as possible. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. Basically, you could deal with exceptions, or you could just let them propagate and let your program fall over. Essentially, I'm going to leave it up to you, and you'll have to figure out, based upon your use case, what is going to be best for you. But let me just show you quickly how you could handle at least some exceptions. So if we do a new.py here, and let's just take our basic example with the way that we've been doing it. I'm going to call this file.py here, and we're going to be dealing with the file type. I'm going to remove everything here but the text IO, and we're going to turn this into a positional argument for file. And let's just talk about let's think about how it works with the argparse file type, and we're going to say file is equal to args.file. And so that's going to be our basic, the way that we've been seeing this before, and we're going to say for line in args.file, print line, and the end is going to be like that. And if we go in, and I just have an example here of in this directory here, if we run this with no arguments, we should get a help that tells us that a file is required here. I have a little input file that has 2 lines of text, says this is some text. And so if I run this on input.txt, it's going to print the input lines. And if I run this on something like AA, which doesn't exist, then it's going to give us this nice error message. So how could we try to get this kind of behavior if we're not going to use argparse file type? Well, let's just take that away. And let's say that we want to continue having this thing be this text IO. Well, to a large extent, mostly what argparse file type is doing is just opening it for us. So we could say args.file is equal to open args.file. And that essentially does this. And so if we run this with a good input file, then it continues to work just the way that we expect. This is a large part of what file type, the argparse file type, is doing for us. But you can see it's doing quite a bit more when you give it something bad. Like, for instance, I give it this file that doesn't exist, or let me touch a file called can't touch this, and it's going to be an empty file, but I'm going to further chmod this to 000 so that we literally can't. If we look at the permissions on this, we can't do anything with this file because there are no permissions that have been set. We can't read, write, or execute anything. No one can. So if I try to run this on file.can'ttouchthis, we see that we're getting this different problem here, permission denied. It's not that the file doesn't exist. Let's run it with that AA again. We see here that the error is no such file or directory. So the error messages are there. There's enough information for the user to figure out that that there's permission denied or there's no such file, and that's okay. But what the problem, and maybe you don't see this as a problem, but I don't like the fact that we have this big what's called a traceback. So starting from line 48, it says it's calling main. Inside of main and line 40, it's calling this get args. Get args is then at line 31 calling this open here, and then the open is finally what fails. And that's okay, maybe even for you as a developer. But think about someone who's using your program, that they're going to get all of this output here, and they're not really going to know what to do with all of this. And so it would maybe be nice if we just simply showed them the error like this. And so let me just show you how we could do that. We could actually put this into something called a try block. So I haven't shown this at all because I don't really like working with exceptions. And so we're going to try to do this line of code. And the way to catch the exception is to have an except block. And we can actually define different kinds of exceptions here. And there's a whole page here that you can go look up on all the different exception types. And the most generic one is just exception. I think it might be here at the top, the base exception. I'm not sure. Anyway, I usually just write exception. And I can say as E, meaning the error, the exception that I'm going to get. And in this, if I catch this, then one of the nice things, if I'm doing this inside the get arg where I still have access to the parser, then I can call parser error, which I've leaned into a lot here in the programs. And so I can actually still get a pretty decent program here. So because I'm calling parser error, I'm going to get this usage statement, which is going to give me the short usage, the quick one. And then it's going to, E here is just this part. So it's printing this no such file or directory. That's actually pretty decent. So we have gotten away from using argparse file type, and we're now simply trying to open this ourselves. And let's just try that on the can't touch this file. Now we see here we're getting permission denied, and without all that traceback, I feel like this is something that our users could probably deal with. And I don't necessarily understand why they wanted to deprecate argparse file type, but if you want to follow the recommendations not to use it, then you could simply put in a try and except block here. I will note that one of the problems with dealing with exceptions is that if you were to, for instance, let's see, there is here a file not found. So a file not found error is one kind of exception. And let's just say we change this to file not found, and we run this code, then we see here we're getting this nice exception. But if we run this on the can't touch this, then now we're getting this traceback. And the problem is because we're not handling the other kind of here, what we're getting here is a permission error. So if you choose to start handling specific exceptions, then you're going to have to make sure that you're handling all of them. Or I think that the way to do this is that you have different exceptions. This is the general we'll put here, and then we'll put in the E. Let's see how this works, and I'll make this into an F string. And so here's the can't touch this, that's the permission denied. Let's see, and we see here general. So this is the one that's being handled here as a general exception. And if we go back to the file not found, then we see general is not there. It's using this one here. So if you want to get into exception handling, you can handle individual kinds of exceptions, or you can just handle the generic case of exception. It's totally up to you. But let's also talk about, like, maybe we don't want to get into this. We're not going to use this text IO anymore. We're just going to pass things around as strings, and that's fine too. So essentially, we just would move all this into our code. So let's talk about, like, we don't have this at all. Let's see. Let me comment that out. Let's say we're not using that. We're just going to use this for line and files, and we're going to open the file here, and just pretend that we're somewhere deep inside the bowels of our code. We're not just in our main. And what happens here is if we pass a good input, then args.file here has been changed to, it's just a string now, and that's what's going to be returned here by file. There's going to be no file checking here. There's going to be nothing done by argparse, and so we're not going to get those nice parser errors. And we're just going to simply open the file here. And so if we try to open can't touch this, then we're going to get this traceback like that. Or if we try to touch some, try to read some file that doesn't exist, we're going to get this traceback. Now, maybe that's fine with you, and maybe if you're just writing code for yourself, you don't care. You can look at a traceback, and there's no reason to get into try and accept blocks. But if you do want to try to handle that, then we're just going to do exactly the same thing. We're just going to put a try block here around this, and we're going to put an accept. And that is, we're not going to be able to call parser error because we don't have that. We could call something just like print. We can just print the exception. That would be fine. And it would look like this. We are waiting for my computer. There we go. So we're just printing that. We're just simply printing the exception, or if we use the can't touch this, where we're getting a permission denied, and that's still, that's a decent error message. If your program, though, one of the things that's happening here is that without the exception, without the handling, the program stops. So for instance, let me put a print statement here, and we're just going to print done to let us know that we got to the end of our program. And so in this case, you see done gets printed because this all happens, this open fails, the exception prints, and then we continue on to done. If we, for instance, let's just take this, move it here, and look at how the code works without the try block. If I, without the try and the catch, if I print this, then what happens is I'm going to get the trace back, and I never see done. So what happens with your traditional exceptions, if they're not handled, they stop the program right there, and so nothing else happens. And sometimes that's what you want. Like, for instance, if this is some sort of an input file that is required for the rest of the program, then you really shouldn't go forward. If it's something like a key error, for where you're trying to access something in a dictionary that doesn't exist, it's pretty annoying that your program would fall over. Maybe you want to catch that and you want to skip over it and just print a warning or just ignore it. So it really comes down to how you want to write your programs. So if it's important to you that you do handle these, if you do want to handle the exceptions, but you also want to stop the program here, then you would maybe just change this to a sysexit. And for that to work, I'm going to need to go import sys. And so what happens is when I run this now with input, it works just fine, and we see it prints done at the end. If I try to run it on something that doesn't exist, then I get a nice error message, and you see I do not see done. And if I try to run on something that I can't read, then I also get my error message, and the program stops right there because I'm calling sysexit, which is nicer than seeing all that traceback, in my opinion. Maybe the traceback is useful for you when you're developing the program to figure out where and how you called something, but it's probably not something you really want to release to your users. So it's just a little bit about, I'm just bringing in here how to play with catching exceptions. I don't really enjoy them. I tend to not catch exceptions in my Python code because I figure there's so many, there's really impossible to know where an exception is going to be thrown. If you call something as simple as string index and something can't be found, that's going to raise an exception. You have no idea if some function you're calling from some other module that you're using or some other user gives you some code. You have no way of knowing that they're going to throw some exception in there. So it's really impossible to be sure that you've caught and handled every single exception that your program could handle. And so therefore, when I'm working in Python world, I just simply accept that probably at some point the program is going to blow up and I'm going to have to deal with it. If you want tighter control over how things like this happen, how error handling happens, then maybe you should invest in learning in a language like Rust. So that's just a little bit of what I have to say about how you can get